dad left me a voicemail by accident. It was meant for my brother. It said, "You're the only son I'm proud of." I listened to it 4 times. Then I saved it. 6 months later, he asked me for $10,000. I played him the recording. "My name's Ethan. I'm 34, and I want to tell you about the voicemail that changed my life." Not in a motivational poster kind of way. More like a wrecking ball through the front wall of everything I thought I knew about my own family. But we'll get there. Let me back up. I grew up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, in one of those split-level houses that looked fine from the outside, but had about 40 years of unresolved tension baked into the drywall. My dad, Gerald, was an electrician, good with his hands, terrible with his words, unless those words were aimed at my younger brother, Sutton. Then suddenly the man was a poet. Sutton was 3 years younger than me, and from the moment he came into the world screaming and perfect, something shifted in our house that never shifted back. I don't want to be dramatic about it. Plenty of families have a golden child. Plenty of older siblings grow up feeling like they got the rough draft of their parents' love, while the younger one got the final edition with the full-color illustrations. But with my dad, it wasn't subtle. It was a lifestyle. Sutton played baseball. Dad never missed a game. I played soccer. Dad showed up maybe twice a season and spent both times on his phone. Sutton got a car for his 16th birthday, a used Mustang that my dad spent 3 weekends restoring in the garage like it was a bonding movie montage. I got my mom's old Corolla with a check engine light that had been on so long it might as well have been decorative. When Sutton graduated high school, Dad threw a barbecue and invited half the neighborhood. When I graduated, he shook my hand and said, "Good job, bud." That was it. Good job, bud. For syllables. I counted. My mom, Jolene, she tried. She really did. She was the buffer, the translator, the person who'd pull me aside after one of Dad's lopsided moments and say, "You know he's proud of you too, Ethan. He just doesn't know how to show it." And I believed her for a long time because I needed to. When you're a kid, you'll build a whole cathedral out of crumbs if that's all someone gives you. I went to community college after high school because that's what I could afford. Dad made it clear that helping with tuition wasn't in the budget, which was interesting because 2 years later, he co-signed a loan for Sutton to attend a private university in North Carolina. I found out about that one at Thanksgiving when Sutton casually mentioned it over pumpkin pie like it was nothing. I looked at my dad. He looked at his plate. Mom changed the subject to the weather. Classic Jolene. But here's the thing about me. I'm not the guy who blows up at the dinner table. I'm not the guy who makes a scene. I internalize. I process. I file it away in a mental cabinet labeled things that hurt, but I'm going to pretend are fine. And then I keep going. I got my associate's degree, got a job at a property management company, and started working my way up. Nothing glamorous. Nothing that would make my dad beam with pride at a barbecue. But it was mine, and I was good at it. By the time I was 28, I was managing a portfolio of residential properties across 3 counties. I'd gotten my real estate license on the side, started flipping a house with a buddy of mine named Coulter, and was pulling in decent money for the first time in my life. Not rich, but comfortable. The kind of comfortable where you stop checking your bank account before buying groceries. Sutton, meanwhile, had bounced around after college. He got a degree in communications, which as far as I can tell is a degree in being confidently unemployed. He worked at a marketing firm for a year, quit because he didn't like his boss, tried to start a podcast about craft beer that lasted 11 episodes, and then moved back home to figure things out. He was 25 and sleeping in his childhood bedroom, and somehow my dad still talked about him like he was the second coming. I'm not saying this to be cruel about my brother. Sutton wasn't a bad guy. He wasn't malicious. He was just comfortable being comfortable, and our dad made sure the cushion never ran out. The problem was never really Sutton. The problem was always Gerald. Now let me tell you about the voicemail. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were my busiest day at work, back-to-back property walkthroughs and tenant meetings, and I barely had time to eat lunch, let alone check my phone. When I finally sat down in my car around 6:30 that evening, I had 3 missed calls from my dad. No texts, just calls. That alone was weird because Gerald wasn't a caller. He was a once-a-month how's-it-going texter who spelled you as you, and thought punctuation was optional. I hit play on the voicemail expecting something routine. Maybe he needed help moving something heavy. Maybe the gutters were clogged again. Instead, I heard him mid-conversation. He hadn't meant to call me at all. The first few seconds were muffled, like the phone was in his pocket. Then his voice came through clear as day. He was talking to someone, and based on the way he was talking, I knew immediately it was Sutton. I'm telling you, Bud, you're the only son I'm actually proud of. Ethan, he's fine, he does his thing, but he's never had that spark, you know? Not like you. You've got something. You've always had something. I just wish he had half of what you've got. There was a pause, and then Sutton's voice, faint but audible. Come on, Dad, that's not really fair. And my dad laughed. Not a mean laugh, not a villain's cackle. Just a casual, dismissive chuckle, like Sutton had said something silly. I'm not being unfair, I'm being honest. There's a difference. The voicemail cut off after that. 47 seconds total. I know because I checked. Then I played it again, and once more after that. 4 times in my car, parked in a strip mall parking lot, watching the sun go down behind a Subway and a nail salon. I didn't cry. I want to be honest about that. I didn't cry because some part of me had always known. Hearing it out loud didn't create the wound. It just confirmed that the wound had been there all along, and that it was exactly as deep as I'd always feared. I saved the voicemail. I don't know why. Some instinct told me to keep it, like my subconscious already knew it would matter someday. I moved it to a folder on my phone labeled insurance. Not because I had a plan, just because it felt like something I should hold on to. That night, I went home to my apartment, heated up leftover pasta, and sat on my couch staring at the wall for about an hour. My girlfriend at the time, Waverly, called me around 9, and I let it go to voicemail. Ironic, right? The guy who just had his life rearranged by a voicemail couldn't bring himself to pick up the phone. I didn't tell anyone about it. Not Waverly, not Coulter, not my mom. I just carried it around like a stone in my pocket, heavy and smooth, and always there. And I made a decision that night, sitting on that couch with cold rigatoni in a quiet apartment. I decided that I was done trying to earn something that was never going to be given. I was done performing for an audience of one who wasn't even watching. What I didn't know yet was that 6 months later, my dad was going to call me again, this time on purpose, and he was going to ask me for $10,000, and I was going to play him that voicemail. But before we get there, I need to tell you what happened in between, because those 6 months changed everything. The week after I heard that voicemail, I did something I hadn't done in years. I skipped Sunday dinner. My mom called to ask if everything was okay, and I told her I had a stomach bug. She believed me because I never missed Sunday dinner. I was the reliable one. That was my whole identity in the family. Ethan shows up. Ethan doesn't complain. Ethan is fine. But I wasn't fine. I was walking around with this voicemail in my pocket like a grenade with the pin half pulled, and every time I saw my dad's name pop up on my phone, I felt something twist in my chest. Not sadness, exactly. More like clarity. The kind of clarity that hurts because it means you can't pretend anymore. I went back to Sunday dinner the following week because Waverly convinced me that isolating wasn't the answer. She didn't know about the voicemail yet, but she could tell something was off. Waverly was sharp like that. She was a dental hygienist with the emotional radar of a therapist and the patience of a saint, which she needed because I was not an easy person to love during that stretch. Dinner was at my parents' house, same as always. Mom made pot roast. Dad sat at the head of the table and talked about the Phillies. Sutton was there with his girlfriend, a girl named Sloan who sold essential oils and spoke in Instagram captions. Everything was normal on the surface, which made it worse, because now I was seeing the patterns I'd been ignoring my whole life. Dad asked Sutton about his latest idea, some kind of online resale business he was thinking about starting. He listened intently, nodded along, asked follow-up questions. That sounds smart, Bud. You've always had a good eye for opportunity. Then he turned to me and said, "So Ethan, how's work?" I told him we'd just closed on a 12-unit apartment building, the biggest deal of my career at that point. He said, "That's nice," and went back to eating his pot roast. That's nice. 2 words. The same inflection you'd use if someone told you they saw a decent sunset. Waverly squeezed my hand under the table. She noticed. She always noticed. Things got worse about 3 weeks later. My dad called me on a Saturday morning and asked if I could come help him fix the deck at the house. I said sure, because that's what I did. I showed up, spent 4 hours in the heat replacing rotted boards and resealing the whole thing. Dad handed me a water bottle and said Sutton was supposed to help, but he's got that thing with Sloan. He didn't say thank you. He didn't even acknowledge that I'd driven 45 minutes to do manual labor on my day off. He just pivoted to explaining why Sutton couldn't make it, like I was the backup plan that required no gratitude. I was sanding down a railing when he said something that almost made me snap. You know, your brother's thinking about getting into real estate too. Maybe you could show him the ropes, help him get started. I stopped sanding. You want me to train Sutton to do my job? Not your job, just the basics. He's a quick learner. Dad, he's never held a job for more than 14 months. Gerald looked at me with this expression I'd seen 1,000 times. It was the face he made when I said something he considered unnecessary. Slightly annoyed, slightly disappointed, like I was being difficult on purpose. He just hasn't found the right fit yet. You could help him with that. I went back to sanding. I didn't say another word about it. But something inside me cracked that day, standing on that deck in the sun, doing free labor for a man who wanted me to hand my career playbook to the son he actually liked. The real breaking point came 2 months after the voicemail. It was my mom's birthday. We all went to an Italian restaurant downtown, one of those places with cloth napkins and breadsticks that actually taste like something. Dad stood up during dinner to make a toast. He talked about how much he loved Mom, how she was the backbone of the family, how she'd raised 2 great sons. Then he looked at Sutton and said, "And I especially want to thank Sutton for putting this whole dinner together." He picked the restaurant, made the reservation, even got the cake. That's the kind of thoughtfulness that makes a parent proud. Here's what actually happened. Sutton texted our family group chat 3 days before Mom's birthday and said, "Should we do dinner?" I responded within 10 minutes with a list of 3 restaurant options, called to make the reservation, and ordered the cake from a bakery that Mom loved. Sutton's contribution was texting, "Sounds good," and showing up. I sat there listening to my dad give my brother a standing ovation for doing functionally nothing, and I felt something shift. Not crack this time. Shift. Like tectonic plates moving under the surface. I smiled through the rest of dinner. I hugged my mom. I told everyone I had an early morning and left before dessert. In the car, I pulled up the voicemail. I didn't play it this time. I just looked at it. 47 seconds. Sitting there in my phone like a loaded weapon. Waverly was waiting up when I got home. She was on the couch with a book and a glass of wine, and she took one look at my face and set both down. "Okay," she said. "Talk to me." So I told her. Everything. The voicemail, the deck, the dinner, the years of being second place in my own family. I played her the recording. She listened to it once, set the phone down on the coffee table, and was quiet for a long time. "Ethan," she finally said, "I need you to hear me when I say this. That voicemail is not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of your father's failure." I nodded. I knew she was right. But knowing something in your head and feeling it in your gut are 2 very different experiences. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I don't know yet, but I'm done pretending it doesn't bother me." That was the night I decided to stop performing for my dad's approval. Not with a big dramatic gesture. Not with a confrontation or a shouting match. I just quietly withdrew. I stopped volunteering for Saturday projects at the house. I stopped staying late at Sunday dinners. I showed up when it mattered, birthdays and holidays. But I stopped going above and beyond for a man who couldn't even say thank you. My mom noticed almost immediately. She called me on a Wednesday night and said, "Ethan, is everything okay between you and your father?" "Everything's fine, Mom. You seem distant." "I'm just busy with work. We closed on another property." She paused. "He does love you, you know. He's just not good at showing it." I'd heard that line so many times it had lost all meaning. It was like a bumper sticker someone had slapped on a broken-down car, as if the right words could substitute for actual maintenance. "I know, Mom," I said. And I changed the subject because I loved my mother and I didn't want to make her the battlefield. But here's what was happening behind the scenes that nobody knew about. During those same 2 months, my dad had been quietly getting himself into financial trouble. Gerald had retired from electrical work the year before, and he'd sunk a chunk of his retirement savings into a sure-thing investment that Sutton's buddy Deacon had recommended. Some kind of real estate syndication deal in Florida that promised 15% annual returns. If that sounds too good to be true, congratulations, you have basic pattern recognition skills. The deal went south. The developer defaulted. My dad lost somewhere in the neighborhood of $80,000. I didn't know any of this at the time. I found out later, piece by piece, like assembling a puzzle where every piece was a different shade of bad decision. But the money was gone, and Gerald was too proud to tell anyone except Sutton, who naturally had no money of his own to help because he was still trying to figure out that resale business from his childhood bedroom. So the clock was ticking. My dad was hemorrhaging savings, his pride was keeping him silent, and the only son he was proud of couldn't help him. Meanwhile, the son he'd overlooked was quietly building something real, something solid, something that was about to matter a whole lot more than he ever expected. I just didn't know it yet. The 3 months after I pulled back from my dad were some of the hardest and best months of my life. And I know that sounds contradictory, but stay with me. The hard part was the loneliness. When you spend your whole life trying to earn someone's approval and then you just stop, it leaves this enormous vacuum. I didn't realize how much of my daily energy had been going toward being good enough for Gerald until I stopped spending it. Suddenly, I had all this emotional bandwidth and nowhere to direct it. I felt untethered, like I'd cut a rope I didn't know was holding me to something. Waverly was my anchor during that stretch. She didn't push me to confront my dad. She didn't try to fix it. She just showed up every single day and reminded me, through her actions more than her words, that I was worth showing up for. She'd leave little notes in my lunch. She'd text me at 2 in the afternoon just to say she was thinking about me. One night, she came home with a framed photo of me and Coulter standing in front of the first house we'd flipped together, both of us grinning like idiots covered in drywall dust. She put it on the mantle and said, "That's what proud looks like." I almost proposed to her right there. I didn't, because I was holding a bowl of cereal and wearing sweatpants with a hole in them, and I figured she deserved better staging. But the thought was there, and it wasn't going away. Work became my outlet. Coulter and I had finished our first flip and cleared about $42,000 in profit after expenses. Not life-changing money, but proof of concept. We found another property almost immediately, a 3-bedroom ranch in a neighborhood that was starting to turn. It needed everything. New kitchen, new bathrooms. The roof had a soft spot the size of a dinner table, and the previous owner had apparently used the basement as a combination workshop and raccoon sanctuary. But the bones were good and the numbers worked. I threw myself into that project with a kind of focus I hadn't felt before. Not desperate focus, purposeful focus. Like I finally understood that everything I'd been building was for me, not for an audience. Every decision I made at work, every wall I tore out, every contractor I negotiated with, it was mine. Nobody was watching. Nobody was grading me. And somehow that made it better. Coulter noticed the change. He's the kind of friend who says exactly what he's thinking, which is either his best or worst quality, depending on the day. We were ripping out old carpet one Saturday when he stopped, wiped his forehead, and said, "You different lately." Different how? I don't know. Meaner with the crowbar. More focused. Like you're building something with a point. I laughed. Maybe I am. Whatever it is, keep doing it. We're ahead of schedule for the first time ever. He wasn't wrong. We finished that second flip in under 4 months, which was almost unheard of for a 2-man operation with limited contractors. We cleared $61,000 on that one. I took my share and did something I'd never done before. I put it into a separate account and started saving for a down payment on my own investment property. Not a flip, a rental, something that would generate income every single month without me swinging a hammer. Around this same time, I got a call from a guy named Harlan, who ran a small but growing property development firm about an hour south of Harrisburg. Harlan had heard about our flips through a mutual contact and wanted to meet for coffee. I figured it was a networking thing, handshakes and business cards and vague promises to stay in touch. Instead, Harlan offered me a position, Director of Acquisitions. His company was expanding into residential multifamily properties, and he needed someone who understood both the numbers and the physical condition of buildings. Someone who could walk a property and know within 30 minutes whether it was worth buying. The salary was nearly double what I was making. Full benefits. Equity stake after 2 years. I told him I needed a week to think about it, which was really just a week to stop pinching myself. I talked it over with Waverly and Coulter. Coulter was the most honest about it. "Take it," he said. "We can still flip on the side if we want to, but this is bigger than anything we'd build in the next 5 years on our own." Waverly agreed. She said she'd never seen my eyes light up the way they did when I was describing the job, and that was all she needed to know. I accepted the position on a Thursday, started the following Monday, and within 6 weeks, I knew I'd made the right call. Harlan was a mentor in a way my dad never was. He was demanding but fair, critical but constructive, and when I did something well, he said so, out loud, in front of other people. The first time he told me I'd done excellent work on a property assessment, I had to excuse myself to the restroom because I felt something crack open in my chest that I'd been holding shut for years. I'm not going to pretend I didn't think about my dad during all of this. I did. Every milestone felt bittersweet because there was still this little kid inside me who wanted to pick up the phone and say, "Hey Dad, guess what happened?" But I didn't, because I knew exactly what he'd say. "That's nice." And I couldn't hear those two words one more time without losing something I wasn't prepared to lose. I did call my mom. I told her about the new job, about the house flips, about how things were going with Waverly. She was thrilled. She cried a little, the happy kind, and told me she always knew I'd do something great. I believed her because my mom had never given me a reason not to. She mentioned that Dad was going through a tough time, but didn't elaborate. I didn't ask. Part of me felt guilty about that, and part of me felt like guilt was just another trick my family had trained me to perform on command. Waverly and I moved in together that month. We found a 2-bedroom apartment with a little balcony that overlooked a park, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was building something that wasn't a reaction to someone else's opinion of me. It was just mine. Ours. Real. I proposed to Waverly on a Sunday morning in our kitchen. She was making scrambled eggs, and I was supposed to be making coffee, but instead I was standing behind her with a ring I'd picked out 2 weeks earlier. No grand gesture. No skywriting. Just me in that kitchen saying, "I want to spend the rest of my life with someone who makes me feel like I'm enough, and that's you. And it's always been you." She said yes with a spatula in her hand and tears running down her face and the eggs burning behind her. It was perfect. I called my mom to tell her. She screamed so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. My dad got on the phone, and I'll give him this. He said congratulations and sounded like he meant it. Then he said, "Sutton's going to be excited for you," which was a weird thing to say because most fathers would just stay in their own moment with their son. But Gerald always had to route everything through Sutton, like an emotional GPS that only had one destination. I let it go. I was too happy to let him take anything from me that day. By the end of those 6 months, here's where I stood. New job with real growth potential. A fiancé who loved me in a way I'd never been loved before. Savings in the bank for the first time ever. 2 successful house flips under my belt with a 3rd in the pipeline. A mentor who treated me like I mattered. And a quiet, unshakable confidence that I had built all of it myself. Without my father's help, without his approval, and without his pride. I was 34 years old, and I finally understood that you don't need the people who raised you to validate the person you've become. It's a nice bonus if they do, but it's not a requirement. What I didn't know was that my dad's financial situation had gotten significantly worse. The Florida deal had collapsed completely, and Gerald had started dipping into his and Mom's savings to cover the gap. Sutton knew. Mom knew something was wrong, but not the full extent. And I was completely in the dark, living my life, minding my business, and about to get a phone call that would bring everything full circle in a way I never could have predicted. That call came on a Friday afternoon, and when I saw my dad's name on the screen, I had no idea that I was about to have the most important conversation of my life. The call came at 4:15 on a Friday. I was at my desk reviewing a property appraisal when my phone buzzed. "Dad." My first instinct was to let it go to voicemail, which is both ironic and appropriate given how this whole thing started. But something made me pick up. Maybe it was the fact that he'd called 3 times in the last hour. Maybe it was that little voice in the back of my head that still, despite everything, didn't want to be the kind of son who ignores his father's calls. "Hey, Dad." "Ethan." "Hey, you got a minute?" He sounded off. Not sick, not panicked, but deflated. Like someone had let the air out of him slowly over a period of months, which, as I'd later learn, was basically what had happened. "Sure, what's up?" There was a long pause. Gerald was not a man who paused. He was a man who spoke in declarative sentences and expected the world to adjust. So the silence told me more than whatever he was about to say. "I need to talk to you about something. In person. Can you come by the house this weekend? Can you give me a general idea of what this is about?" Another pause. "It's financial. I've got a situation, and I could use your advice. You're the one who knows about this stuff." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because of the sheer audacity of the framing. I was the one who knew about this stuff. Not the son he was proud of. Not the son with the spark. The other one. The useful one. "I'll come by Saturday," I said. "Around noon." "Thanks, Bud. I appreciate it." Bud. He called us both Bud. At least he was consistent with the vocabulary. even if nothing else was equal. I hung up and sat at my desk for a while, turning the conversation over in my mind. Then I called Waverly. She listened, and when I finished, she said something that reframed the whole thing. "Ethan, if he's asking you for help, it means Sutton couldn't fix it. Think about what that means." She was right. It meant the favorite son had reached the limits of his usefulness, and now Gerald was turning to the backup generator. The one who was always there, always reliable, always fine. I spent Friday night doing something I probably shouldn't have, but definitely don't regret. I called Coulter and asked him to do some digging. Coulter had a contact at a title company who owed him a favor, and within a couple of hours, I had a general picture of my parents' financial situation. I'm not going to pretend this was a normal thing to do. It wasn't. But I'd spent 34 years walking into family situations blind, and I was done being the last person in the room to know what was going on. What I found wasn't good. My parents had taken out a home equity line of credit about 8 months earlier, which lined up almost perfectly with when the Florida investment went sideways. The balance was substantial. On top of that, there were some late notices on utilities that suggested cash flow was tighter than it had ever been. Gerald's retirement income from his pension and Social Security covered the basics, but the basics didn't include an $80,000 loss and the interest on a credit line taken out in a panic. I also did something else that night. I transferred the voicemail from my phone to a cloud drive, then downloaded it onto a thumb drive. I put the thumb drive in my jacket pocket. I didn't have a plan for it exactly, but I had a feeling. The same instinct that had told me to save it 6 months ago was now telling me to bring it with me. Call it intuition. Call it preparation. Call it whatever you want. I just knew I wasn't walking into that house empty-handed. Saturday morning, Waverly kissed me at the door and said, "You don't owe him anything. Remember that." I nodded. But the truth was more complicated than that, and she knew it. You can know you don't owe someone something and still feel the weight of 34 years of wanting them to see you. Those two things can exist in the same body at the same time. I got to my parents' house at noon. Mom was in the kitchen, which meant she knew something was happening but was pretending she didn't, which was her default coping mechanism for anything involving Gerald and feelings. She hugged me tight and said, "He's in the den." The way she said it told me everything. She was worried, and she was hoping I could fix it. I walked into the den and found my dad sitting in his recliner, which was unusual because Gerald only sat in the recliner when he was watching football or recovering from back surgery. It was neither of those things. He had a folder on the side table next to him, the kind of manila folder that never contains good news. "Sit down, Ethan." I sat across from him on the couch. He opened the folder and started laying it out. The Florida investment, the losses, the home equity line, the fact that he and Mom were looking at a shortfall that would become a serious problem within the next few months if something didn't change. He explained it all in his electrician's voice, matter-of-fact and technical, like he was describing a circuit diagram instead of the financial collapse of his retirement. I listened without interrupting. I asked a few questions. How much was the credit line balance? What were the monthly payments? Had he talked to anyone about restructuring? He hadn't. Of course he hadn't. Gerald didn't ask for help. Gerald fixed things. Except this time, the thing that was broken was bigger than his toolbox. Then he got to the point. "Ethan, I need to borrow $10,000. I know that's a lot to ask. I'll pay you back. I just need to bridge a gap until I can figure out a longer-term solution." $10,000. There it was. The number, hanging in the air between us like a price tag on 3 decades of being second best. I didn't respond right away. I let the silence sit there because Gerald hated silence, and I wanted him to feel what it was like to wait for someone's reaction when the stakes were high. "Can I ask you something first?" I said. "Sure." "Why me?" He blinked. "What do you mean? Why are you asking me? Why not Sutton?" His jaw tightened. Just a fraction, but I saw it. Sutton's not in a position to help right now. He's still getting his business off the ground. His business that he's been getting off the ground for 2 years from your spare bedroom? "Ethan, I'm not being difficult, Dad. I'm asking a genuine question. You've got 2 sons. One of them lives in your house rent-free and has never held a job for more than a year. The other one has a career, a fiancé, savings, and just got promoted. And somehow I'm the one you come to when you need money. But I've never been the one you come to when you want to brag about your kids." He looked at me like I'd slapped him. Not angry. Stunned. Like this was the first time he'd ever heard me push back. Which, to be fair, it basically was. "That's not fair," he said. "Isn't it?" I've always been proud of you, Ethan. And that's when I felt the thumb drive in my jacket pocket, sitting there like a heartbeat. I didn't reach for it yet. I wasn't ready yet. But I knew the moment was coming, and I wanted him to say a few more things first. I wanted him to build the case himself, brick by brick, so that when the wall came down, he'd know he was the one who'd built it. You've always been proud of me, I repeated. Really? Of course. Then why did I have to hear, from a voicemail you accidentally left on my phone 6 months ago, that Sutton is the only son you're actually proud of? The color drained from his face. Slowly, like someone had pulled a plug somewhere. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. For the first time in my life, Gerald had absolutely nothing to say. I saved it, Dad. Do you want to hear it? I reached into my jacket and pulled out the thumb drive. I set it on the coffee table between us, right next to his manila folder full of bad news. The room was so quiet I could hear the kitchen clock ticking from 2 rooms away. My mom's footsteps had stopped. She was listening. Everyone was listening. And Gerald just stared at that little piece of plastic like it was a bomb with a timer counting down. Which, in a way, it was. My dad stared at the thumb drive for what felt like a full minute, but was probably closer to 15 seconds. Then he looked up at me and said, "Ethan, whatever's on there, I'm sure I didn't mean it the way it sounded. You haven't even heard it yet. I don't need to hear it. I know what I say sometimes, and I know I don't always get things right. But that doesn't mean I don't love you. Dad, you told Sutton, and I'm quoting here, you're the only son I'm actually proud of. You said I've never had the spark. You said you wished I had half of what he's got. Those aren't words you can repackage with context. Those are words that mean exactly what they say." He leaned back in his recliner. His hand went to his forehead, rubbed it slowly, and I could see him doing the thing he always did when cornered, trying to figure out the quickest route to making this someone else's fault. I was probably frustrated about something. You know how I get. You laughed, Dad. Sutton tried to push back, and you laughed and said you were just being honest. That wasn't frustration. That was your genuine opinion of me, delivered in a moment when you didn't know I was listening. My mom appeared in the doorway with a dish towel twisted in her hands. "What's going on?" she asked, though her face said she'd already heard enough. "Sit down, Mom," I said gently. "There's something you should hear." I played the voicemail on speaker. 47 seconds. When it ended, my mom looked at Gerald with an expression I'd never seen before. Not anger, recognition. Like she'd always suspected this was how he felt, but had been hoping she was wrong. "Gerald," she said. Just his name. But the way she said it carried the weight of 34 years of buffering and explaining and making excuses. "Jolene, come on. It's not what it sounds like." "It's exactly what it sounds like," she said. "I've been telling Ethan his whole life that you're proud of him, that you just don't know how to show it. And you made me a liar." That hit him harder than anything I'd said. Gerald could dismiss me. He'd been doing it for decades. But Jolene was the one person whose opinion he actually cared about, and she was looking at him like he was a stranger. I let the silence breathe. Harlan had taught me that the most powerful thing you can do in a negotiation is stop talking when the other person is uncomfortable. So I sat there and let my father marinate in what he'd built. "Ethan," he finally said, his voice smaller now. "I'm sorry." "For what, specifically?" "For the voicemail. For saying those things." "The voicemail was just the receipt, Dad. I need you to understand that this has been my entire life. Every game you missed. Every time you celebrated Sutton for things I actually did. The voicemail didn't create the problem. It confirmed it." He opened his mouth, closed it, and for the second time that afternoon, Gerald had nothing. My mom was crying quietly. She looked at me and said, "I should have said something to him a long time ago instead of just trying to smooth things over. You did the best you could, Mom. I've never blamed you." I turned back to my dad. "I'm not giving you $10,000. That would make me what I've always been to you. Useful but unappreciated. A resource, not a son. Ethan, please. We're in real trouble here. I'm going to help, but not the way you asked. Mom doesn't deserve to lose her house because you made a bad investment based on a tip from Sutton's friend Deacon, who, last I checked, also thought cryptocurrency was going to replace the US dollar by 2023. Despite everything, my mom let out a small laugh at that. Even my dad's mouth twitched. For a second, we were just a family in a room, messy and broken and kind of ridiculous. "Here's what I'm going to do," I continued. "I'm going to sit down with you and Mom and go through your finances. Not as your son, as someone who does this for a living. We're going to restructure the credit line, set up a realistic budget, and figure out a plan that doesn't involve borrowing from your children. If there's a gap that can't be covered, I'll help. But it'll be a loan, with terms in writing. Gerald looked at me with something I'd never seen directed at me before. It wasn't pride, not yet, but it was respect. Actual respect. Like he was seeing me clearly for the first time and realizing that the son he'd overlooked had become the most capable person in the room. And one more thing, I said. You're going to have a conversation with Sutton. A real one. Not about me, not about the money. About him. Because he's 28 years old, he lives in your house, he doesn't have a steady income, and that's not because he hasn't found the right fit. It's because you've made it too comfortable for him to fail. You haven't done him any favors, Dad. You've done the opposite. That one landed like a hammer. All those years of propping Sutton up, praising him, protecting him from consequences, it hadn't made Sutton stronger. It had made him dependent. The son he was most proud of was the least equipped to stand on his own. And the son he'd neglected was the one sitting across from him with a career, a plan, and the ability to help. The irony was not lost on anyone in that room. We spent the rest of that afternoon at the kitchen table going through their finances. My dad, to his credit, listened. He didn't argue or deflect. By the end of the day, we had a plan. The credit line could be refinanced at a lower rate. I identified about $3,000 in unnecessary monthly spending. The gap that remained was smaller than my dad had feared, and I agreed to cover it as a structured loan at 0 interest, paid back over 18 months. We put it in writing. He signed it. I signed it. Mom witnessed it. Before I left, my dad walked me to my car. We stood in the driveway, the same driveway where I'd learned to ride a bike, where I'd loaded up my Corolla with everything I owned when I moved out at 18. He put his hand on my shoulder and said, I don't know how to fix what I've done. You start by doing it differently, I said. Not with words, with actions. Call me when something good happens in my life and sound like you mean it. Show up. Pay attention. That's all I've ever wanted. He nodded. His eyes were red, but he didn't cry. Gerald didn't cry, but he was close, and that was enough for me to know that something real had shifted. Sutton called me 2 days later. He sounded shaken, which told me Dad had followed through. Ethan, I didn't know about the voicemail. I swear. And I'm sorry for the stuff Dad said. It's not your fault, Sutton. You didn't ask to be the favorite. Yeah, but I didn't do anything to stop it either. And I should have. That was the most self-aware thing my brother had ever said to me. We talked for about 20 minutes, longer than we'd talked in years, and by the end of it, I felt something loosen in my chest that had been tight for as long as I could remember. That was about 4 months ago. My dad has paid back 2 installments on the loan, on time, without being reminded. He calls me every Sunday, and not just to talk about Sutton. Last month he asked me about a property deal I was working on and actually listened. He told me he was impressed. Out loud. Unprompted. We're not suddenly best friends. But we're building something, and for the first time, it feels like we're building it together. Sutton moved out of my parents' house and got a job at a logistics company. Entry level, nothing glamorous, but it's steady and it's his. He and Sloan broke up, which was probably overdue. We grab lunch sometimes. It's nice. Mom told me recently that the kitchen table conversation was the first time she'd felt like our family was being honest with each other. You did that, Ethan, she said. Waverly and I got married 2 months ago. Small ceremony, backyard of our new house. Coulter was my best man. Harlan was there. My mom cried the whole time, the good kind. My dad stood up during the reception and gave a toast. He looked at me, not at Sutton, not at anyone else, and he said, I spent a lot of years not seeing what was right in front of me. Ethan, you're the strongest person I know, and I'm proud of you. I looked at Waverly. She squeezed my hand under the table, and for the first time in my life, I didn't need to hear those words to believe I was enough. But I'd be lying if I said they didn't feel pretty good. That voicemail is still saved on my phone. I don't listen to it anymore. I don't need to. It served its purpose. It was the thing that broke me, and then it was the thing that set me free. Sometimes the worst thing you'll ever hear is the best thing that could have happened to you.